University at Channel 4, and it's my job to navigate us through this session as a chair. We're up against some quite formidable competition today. My boss, Jay Hunt, is doing the controller session elsewhere, and Gary Neville, who I understand is a footballer who once played for Manchester United and some team called England, is here as well, talking about football in the media and his role on screen and indeed off. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of people attracted to those various different big shows. But interestingly enough, here in this room, I think without any hyperbole, we're talking here about a piece of television history that we're about to talk about, and about a moment within television where many... That's next door, is it? Yeah, it's okay. We'll just ignore it and we'll pretend that it wasn't. It's leaking through the walls. But keep in mind as well that we're at a juncture in the evolution of the networks and structures of British broadcasting, which truly are revolutionary. Many people will know the long and sometimes difficult journey that people that are fans of regional and indeed local television have gone through over the years to try to find some means or mechanism whereby networks could be built that would allow people to speak to their own communities or speak in exciting ways to smaller numbers of people. And if you've thought about it in a kind of broader sense, over the years there's tended to be sometimes a kind of sneering attitude towards local television over the years. I think that often managers and even regulators at the core of network television have tended to kind of look down on it, almost with that slightly kind of pitying way of down your way television. And we know that, you know, characters like Alan Partridge have brought about all sorts of different kind of conceits about the nature of localness that have led to people demeaning it and kind of stereotyping it and whatever. I think that we're at the beginning of a journey that will end all of that forever, because there's the opening up, as we know, of 19 independent local TV channels here in the UK to more than 12 million UK homes. By any stretch of the imagination, that's massive audiences. That's as big, if not bigger, than BBC One or ITV can reach through their biggest ever shows. So we're talking about significant numbers of people that will connect to local TV in some way. But I think there's another reason for arguing why the moment of localness has arrived and why it's come about in this era that we live in. We live, as we all know, in an era of global multinational capitalism, and we've seen the tensions at the end of the spectrum between the global and the local. No more so than in the food chain, where we've seen the rise and rise and rise of restaurants and chefs and pop-ups that are offering local produce or locally sourced food or locally sourced wines or ciders or whatever to communities. And I think that what we're seeing is a disproportionate rise in a pride and a belief in notions of localness that actually make the moment of local TV to have come a very apt time in our history. Here to discuss it with me, and I'm going to very quickly introduce the panel, although we'll hear more from them in order, is Nigel Dacre, who's the chair of the Local TV Association and leader at Notts TV, Bobby Hain to my right from STV, Jane Moat to my left from London Live, and Matt Stringer, who towards the end will look at some of the technological issues through the mindset of Garland Partners, the company that he recommends. Without stealing any of their thunders, Nigel's going to be talking a good bit about how the relationship of producers to the local TV ecology. Bobby's going to be talking about the way in which news, information and content can be put out across a whole sub-network of different local offerings. And Jane, who's always been a passionate believer in the role that talent and new talent can play in the TV ecology, will be talking about that from the perspective of local TV as well. So the background, of course, is that the first 19 licenses have been rolled out, and throughout 2014 into next year, we'll start to see different variations of the notion of local TV. What can we expect? Well, let's take a little clip that will introduce what we're about to see.
The Prince of Wales officially opened Houghton Revisited, which showcases over 70 masterpieces that have returned home to Norfolk after 234 years.
I'm Donald McIntyre, and this is my investigation into one of the most distressing, tragic, and memorable murders of recent years.
What is wrong with you people? Can you not see how great this city can be?
Tune in, Notts TV, Freeview, Channel 8. I will.
Welcome to Wildabout. Today we're going to be seeing firsthand exactly how the keepers here at Banham Zoo go about training birds of prey with a hawking experience.
To be honest, I really don't know what I'm going to play because I haven't hung out in gay clubs for a while.
You're not worked it out?
Well, it kind of it's either kind of quite camp and queeny, or it's quite dirty.
Bit of fisticuffs there. I smell shenanigans.
Our cold case team believe that the murder took place in the following manner.
Well, he seemed very impressed, I think. And,
I always get worried when you look up behind me. Whoa!
well,
Sit back, relax, open another can of Thatchers and tune in to Channel 8, where very soon you'll find Made in Bristol, a TV station just for this city.
Bonkers.
Rob Setchell, Mustard TV, switch the light!
It's going to be down in Enfield.
Yes, thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Nigel, for playing that introductory tape. Let's start, Nigel, with a couple of big questions before you move into your own presentation. One of the things that strikes me is that there's always been a debate within the ecology of British television around regionalism and regionality. And I remember people saying the trouble with regional TV is it's simply not regional enough. In other words, that it didn't drill down into those pockets of local culture or subcultures within our community that the network simply couldn't get close to, and regional TV often failed to address. So is local TV going to be local enough?
Yeah, well, I think that's the reason why we're all here. That's the reason why this is all happening, is because that's exactly the thing that's been missing from the UK media system, is having proper local coverage. And it's interesting in this country mainly because of ITV, we've got a really strong tradition of regional coverage, but we don't have local coverage. And so what's interesting about this, because it's drilling down right into very specific areas, from whether it's Brighton or Cardiff or Birmingham, I do think this is an opportunity to make the coverage, for the first time really, particularly specifically local. Yeah.
Is your anticipation that it might rewrite some of the rules of television?
Well, with these budgets, it's got to.
Yeah.
So, we're going to have to come up with new ways of working, new ways of broadcasting. And also, I think it will bring in a kind of new generation of staff and presenters. So I think you see it there actually already in the kind of feel of that tape we've just seen. There's quite a lot of, I think, innovation and new thinking coming through amongst the channels.
Yeah, I'm just going to nip across the panel to give them their first thought, and then Nigel, I'm coming straight back to you for a presentation. Bobby, you're sitting here. What would you imagine the big key challenge for you, the facing STV in the context of local television?
I think for us, the question is, and it's particular to us, which is, can we make sure that what we do is different enough from our existing channels to be distinctive and find a new audience, but equally fits in with what we do so that people understand that it comes from STV. I think that's quite a delicate balance, because we have found, to the point you made earlier on, that actually by going more local in our existing Channel 3 service, with news particularly, we've increased the audience. So we've got a separate programme now from Edinburgh, we've got one from Glasgow, there's one in Aberdeen, there's an opt-out for Dundee. So we are getting more local as a broadcaster. So having a kind of multi-layered approach where we've got a Channel 3 service, we've got local services in Glasgow and Edinburgh, and we've got a digital service, I think making sense of all that as a consumer, so that you know this stuff comes from STV, but equally it has a distinctive character and identity, and it does something different depending where you're consuming it, so that City TV is different from the main STV channel. I think that's a challenge for us.
Big challenge. And Jane, of course, you've got one of the most remarkable circuses in the world to play against as your backdrop, because London is, of course, a location with lots of localities, and in lots of ways, because it's the heartlands of the network, actually making something distinctively local from London is itself a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, we're actually almost banning the word local in our world, because we're 9 million people, we're bigger than Sweden, double the size of Denmark. You know, we have to be pan-London in what we do, but being pan-London and making content that will excite all Londoners doesn't mean about being West End London. So for us, it's about changing those cliched views of London that the networks always give, you know, the tourist London. We want to be about London by Londoners, for Londoners, and I think there's a lot that we can do with that, and within the Pan-London service, which will be on every platform, all the content has to appeal to people who have a London sensibility. But we will also have hyper-local services on a non-linear basis for all the 32 boroughs in the City of London. So we'll have a sort of grassroots entry point into London Live, which will be a platform for Londoners, which we can get user-generated content, we can serve our content that's relevant to each locale, and have other news and information for people at a very local level. So we're going to be doing both.
Yeah, and if you're successful, is there a chance, I'm projecting the future here now, that likes of BBC 4 and Channel 4 might stop making programmes about Islington?
No, not unless they do it. No, it's bizarre, isn't it? And it's the same in the newspaper industry as well. I mean, people just get besotted by London. The only good thing is we're going to make such interesting content that they'll probably get bored of trying to compete with us. So maybe they'll go and choose some other city that hasn't yet launched a local TV service.
Now, Matthew, you're going to say a couple of words now, because towards the end of the session, you're going to help us conclude with some of the kind of technological challenges. But what, in a nutshell, what are the big things for you?
I suppose the key here is, I guess, content, as I think has been highlighted by everybody else, and the advances in things such as cellular networks and technology in general, mobile phones, all the various different technologies that exist now are becoming more sustainable and more broadcast grade, I would say.
So we're in a situation where everybody is a consumer, but equally it's the case that everybody can be a producer, because they carry around with them the means to make media in their iPhones or their pocket phones or whatever. You know.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, we'll be coming to that, but Nigel, I'm going to start with you, because you're going to give us an introduction into the local TV network and some of the background. Let's be honest, a wee plug for Notts TV, maybe?
There may be in there.
There may be in there,
a little bit. No, but listen, I'm the chair of the local TV network, which is the association that represents the organisations and companies that are going to be launching local TV channels over the next 2 years. We work very closely with Comux, which is the company that's doing a brilliant job at the moment setting up the infrastructure and making the whole thing happening from the technical side. So this is it, though, the local TV channels, as Stuart said. As you can see there at the bottom, 19 channels are now licensed so far. And what's interesting is that Ofcom is spending the next 6 months licensing the further 28. So they're not waiting to see how the 19 go before they do it. They're keeping the real momentum going. They're going to appoint the first batch, I think, of 7 in October, and they hope to get the process done by next February. So that means that within 2 to 3 years' time, we're going to have anything between 40 to 50 local TV channels licensed around the country. And we had the breakfast session this morning, which some of you may have been at. And the main sort of message that we got across there is that after all these years of debate and discussions and panel sessions like this, local TV in the UK is now actually happening. It's finally happening. And we're going to see this rollout happen. The logos that you can see there in the middle just makes the point that this is a really diverse network, and it's going to be really difficult to make generalizations about it. So at the top there you can see that we've got some really well-established companies like STV, who are launching in Glasgow and Edinburgh, the Evening Standard launching in London, Archant Newspapers launching Mustard TV in Norwich. In the middle we've got quite a few commercial companies that have been set up specifically to launch local TV, and then we've got a range of community-based channels such as Seven in Grimsby and Sheffield. So that's the list of the first 19, the first phase. You can see it there going down from Belfast all the way down to Southampton. Grimsby, and Leah Nietzsche, who runs Grimsby, is here somewhere in the audience. They're at the back waving. She's actually launched, she's the first one to launch, and she'll be launching the Grimsby channel in November. I'll touch wood here, but anyway. And that's all planned out. And then everyone else is going to be rolling out from there onwards. I think the majority of channels will be launching around the sort of March to April through to August, September period. The Notts TV plug. I just wanted to give it sort of a kind of micro example of a local TV channel. The Notts TV, we won our licence last October. We're going on air next April. We're going to do an hour of news a day. There's going to be a lot of other general content such as arts, consumer, documentaries. What's interesting, I think, is the consortium that's running it, the consortium that won the bid, is made up of the Nottingham Post newspaper, who's going to help us with ad sales, and we're going to do the headlines from the Post newsroom. Nottingham Trent University, that's got a very large broadcast journalism course, and we'll be using their studio that already exists, so we don't have to rebuild or build a studio. Confetti Media, which is a big production company in Nottingham, and my company, Inclusive Digital, which will be doing programme production. So I think it's an interesting example of how a group of organisations came together to try and make local TV work. For you, whether you're from the broadcast sector or for production companies, to understand the local TV sector, I'll just give a few headlines. The government, to try and kickstart this process, introduced various measures. The first, of course, is the digital switchover funding, which is coming through, £40 million over 3 years. Comux is looking after 25 million of that to do all the engineering work. They're at work there, you can see their helicopter, but it's all the transmitter stuff, it's all the play-out systems. The second thing is the relaxation of the adminatage rules. This is quite significant. We will be the only channel in the UK which has the adminatage limits relaxed. That's not going to lead to wall-to-wall adverts, but it does lead to some quite interesting discussions about long-form adverts. We are the only channel that's going to be able to run, for instance, an hour-long programme about property advertising. You can't do that currently because it's not teleshopping, but because of the relaxation, we'll be able to do it. So I think there's some quite interesting areas around there. And then there's the EPG prominence on Freeview. This is a grab taken from the new website that's being launched today, just to make the point that we're going to be on Channel 8 in England and Northern Ireland, and Channel 34 in Scotland and Wales, although we're hoping that's going to come down to a lower number before we actually launch. Okay, every local channel has got to have an Ofcom licence. The Ofcom licence is quite short, it's only a page and a half, but two crucial things for each channel is how many hours of locally produced content they're committing to and how many hours of local news per week they're committing to. So you can have as many ideas going to a local channel as you like, but the people running those channels will be really focused on whatever content plans are coming up, that they meet the quotas that they've got to meet for their licence. I'm just going to end on this slide before we go into see in more detail Scotland and London. In terms of content, the sort of things that we're all looking at in terms of local TV channels are clearly, number one, they've got to have a genuinely local focus. Two, this point, because of our licences, you will find that most channels need to make a good part of their content locally. So there's no point coming up with an idea to make a whole load of programmes in London or somewhere else and then ship them around the country. They've got to be locally produced. Everyone's looking for new ideas of UGC and how to involve local people and local organisations. It's got to be cost effective. Again, we can't generalise on this because London, as you'll hear, has got much bigger budgets than other people, but nevertheless, I think the majority of channels are going going to have to be looking at very, very tight budgets. And so we'll all be looking at kind of innovative funding and revenue models. So that's it. That's the homepage of the new website that's being launched today, getcloser.tv. It's got a lot more detail and all our contact numbers.
Thank you very much indeed, Nigel. I was just wondering also if you could just talk us through some of the couple of points there that you made that I thought were worth just expanding on. One of which is you mentioned the consortia of different people that had come together in Nottingham. As we look across the whole franchise, the whole licenses that have been issued, is consortia a recurring pattern across most of them?
No, it's a complete mixture. So, I think Nottingham is probably the clearest example of a consortium that's come together. No, I mean, I think a lot of the companies have a range of shareholders. So how do you define a consortium? But I think if you go just one step further, I think every single channel that I'm aware of is making real efforts to work with local partners and local organisations to have a kind of collaborative approach. Because clearly the days where you could just sit in a big glass building and pump out the programmes are not going to work in local TV. We've actually got to get down working with the community to make these programmes.
And you pointed quite firmly at two really rich sources of potential creative innovation, one of which is greater usage or cleverer usage of user-generated content. The other is, interestingly, a different concept of what the advertising model might look like, where we've all grown up with on commercial television with the 30-second spot ad, quite, as you say, quite heavily regulated. But now we're in a situation where innovation around either ad-funded programming or some other commercial venture could be quite innovative.
This is quite complicated, and I don't want to overstate the case, but clearly we'll still be having spot ads, both network ads and local ads. There'll still be programme sponsorship, advertising, funded programming, and all the rest of it. The one difference for these models is that we can do longer form advertising. An example maybe to do a half-hour programme about advertising 3 local restaurants. As long it's got to meet both the advertising code though, as well as the programme code. So it's got to look like an advert. It's got to be labelled as an advert. You can't
sneak it in there.
You can't present it in a kind of consumer show fashion or anything like that. So we're going to have to tread this path very carefully, and a lot of work is being done. But I just think that was one of the big measures that were brought in by the government to try and kickstart the local TV sector. So and I don't think it's the most important thing to talk about here at all, but I just think in the mix, it's quite interesting that we'll be looking at some longer form adverts.
One of the things that local media more generally has been good at, whether it's the evening newspaper or your local radio station or whatever, is campaigning, whether that's campaigning around a social issue or on behalf of a charity or indeed of a local institution, a football club or whatever. Do you imagine that we'll see a rise of campaign of local communities engaging the local TV to campaign?
Okay, well, I mean, we're as set by the impartiality rules as anyone. My instinct on it, but perhaps I come from a bit more of an impartial background, is that we'll be reporting on campaigns. Clearly, we want to get right down in amongst the community and seeing, what's important, what people care about, what are people arguing about. But I never particularly saw that we would be going out and doing a lot of sort of campaigning on our own right. That's not to say that there aren't some interesting themes and issues that we'll be covering. But hey, I'm only talking about NOTS TV now, and I think there's a broader debate to be had there.
Well, let's move on to STV, and as Nigel pointed out, slightly different setup here because the organisation exists. It already has licences in Scotland, and it's got a very, very long track record, has been part of the ITV network of licensees across the years. So Bobby Hayne, who's leading on this area, Bobby, why don't you just introduce us to what STV is seeking to do and maybe point up where you can any points of difference with the NOTS TV model?
Thank you, Stuart. Yes, so STV is already very much into local. Our story, particularly over the last 5 years, has been about growing more local content, and over the last 3 years, we've been piloting digital services in around 20 different areas of Scotland, where we have created community content specifically for those individual communities. So for us, one of the positions that we start this with is we have a team of 125 journalists across Scotland. They make different versions of the news at 6 o'clock. we have a fantastic news gathering operation which is picking up stories across the whole day, but for us the opportunity is slightly different. Actually, the output from that team could be much more. It's limited by the fact that we have a 25-minute slot of content at 6 o'clock. That is a network restriction. That's how much content there is. The fantastic opportunity for us is we've got 24 hours a day in the local areas that we can use some of those stories and some of those content, but really bring a different dimension to the stories and add to what we will be gathering, what we know about the area, and how we present that content. So we start with some lots of things in the bag, but equally, as I said earlier on, the challenge for us is to create services which are distinctive and very highly targeted for the areas that they will be aimed at, in other words, in Edinburgh and in Glasgow. So I've got some examples of news footage which is culled from our existing news across Scotland, and also some of the online material which you're seeing in the various sites across our digital offering just now.
The Science Centre is a real asset to Scotland. It's a real focal point in bringing in researchers, bringing in industry, and allowing the wider society to understand some of the development, some of the creativity that's taking place out in the universities and in our industrial science parks, etc. This exhibition around the human body is the biggest development we've done to date, and really is a kind of culmination of all of our experiences to date to try and bring what we hope is a world-class exhibition here to Glasgow.
It seems the only one not caught up in all the excitement at Edinburgh Zoo was Tian Tian herself. She spent most of the time sitting inside, resting or sleeping, but the signs for pregnancy are good.
So is she a mum-to-be? Well, one of the key signs that Tian Tian might be pregnant is a sort of nesting behaviour. She's built a bed of bamboo underneath her, she's restless, she's tired, and she's off her food.
George Square will undergo a revamp following a consultation by Glasgow City Council. 6 designs have been shortlisted out of 35 submissions.
Absolutely fabulous. These are absolutely fabulous.
Yeah, they look like they're from like, I don't know, they sound like Barcelona
I like
or
that
Paris
one as
or
well.
something.
That one looks like the Ramblers.
On the Hearts badge up there it says 1874, the year the club was founded. Now 139 years later, its very existence is in doubt. In the short term, players and staff face significant redundancies. With huge debts and no cash to work with, the administrator will need to cut costs substantially to keep the business trading.
They're a familiar sight across cities, but the bus lane camera is a relatively new and costly deterrent. Since their introduction in Glasgow, motorists caught using the lanes have paid fines totalling over £4.8 million.
I'm Mark Beaumont, in the Meadows in the middle of Edinburgh, and we're here for Pedal on Parliament. In my opinion, some cycling campaigns can create a real them and us. You know, a case of we're cyclists and other road users and they dislike each other. That's not helpful for anyone. The real world that we live in, I drive a car, I cycle my bike, I'm passionate about cycling. It's making space for all and making a safe space for all.
So I think the thing that really connects those stories together, I mean, and those are treatments for existing environments, which are, as I say, our Channel 3 service and our service for the digital content streams that we run just now. But those stories, with some exception, and the Pandas is a good exception, and to a certain extent the Heart story for Edinburgh, those are stories that don't travel terribly far beyond the cities that they are about. And I think that there is not a huge deal of airspace or place where that kind of story is available for people who live in those cities. And as I say, the thing that we found in our Channel 3 experience is that there is a real appetite for local news. There's an increased audience since we introduced the local services, and that is the kind of basis that we will use to make decisions about stories and content from a news perspective for the new channels as they come along. So, and I think the other thing to remember, particularly in Scotland, is a lot of news that you see, which is network news for national UK news, carries stories about the education department or about the criminal justice system or health or so on, which are devolved matters in Scotland that actually don't apply in the same way to the audiences, whether it's in Edinburgh, Glasgow, or other parts of Scotland. There's a real opportunity for a seam of editorial to create new news content that connects with audiences in specific cities. And I think there are two other things I would say about, one is about technology and one is about staffing and resources. In technology terms, I think what you see there, aside from the stories, is content that could be produced in very different ways. There's a real opportunity here again to start again from scratch with a new service that doesn't rely on some of the language of television so far, but finds a way of inventing new ways of telling stories, new techniques, new formats, new ways of talking to the audience. Because I think the idea of for us, the idea of just starting a television service that you watch on a TV screen in the corner of your room seems terribly old-fashioned. It's a very important part of the mix. The primacy of television is fantastic. Its resilience is amazing. We're watching 4 hours of it every day still. That's superb. But equally, increasingly audiences will expect to pick up a device wherever they are, whatever that device is, and get access to the same content. So you end up with this kind of assets and paths mentality where you're creating a whole bunch of stuff and you're serving it, letting the audience navigate through it and letting them pull stuff that they want and what they're interested in. And at the same time, if there is a chance to catch up, you can still be a passive viewer and come to that stuff at peak time, because our service will be very peak time focused as you go forward. But that is a real opportunity to bring different types of content into the mix and, as has been said already, to introduce interactiveness in a way, or interactivity in a way that's not previously been done to this extent by television, because we're building these platforms from scratch. And that takes you on to technology, and I think Matt's going to demonstrate the connectivity options that you have now. And I think the chance, the fact that you have to be a multi-platform operator in today's world going forward, and designing from the ground up these services, that's exactly where we'll be. Finally, on resourcing and staffing, local TV has a huge role to play in finding the next generation of program makers, of journalists, of television resource. You know, it used to be 25 years ago, you would start as a journalist in a local newspaper. You might then graduate to a local radio station that was doing lots of packages and interviews and creating audio. And then you might get a job in a regional TV station. And then the number of network correspondents who've trodden that particular path is enormous. That's not how it works anymore. And, you know, and I think local newspapers are not employing as many trainees and new people. There's very little audio produced by local radio stations. It's very much rip and read now. It's about national stories. There's not packages and magazine programs the way they used to have it. What a fantastic way to get into television, to come in. And I think, you know, the interesting challenge is, it used to be that people were knocking on the door to get in and use all the kit. Actually now, when they knock on the door, they've got better kit than TV services have. You know, they are digital natives. Yeah. They've got kit in their pocket that can make HD content there and then. So the real challenge for them is around storytelling, journalism, and of course, because we're public service broadcasters, there has to be impartiality, there has to be compliance with the codes, there has to be a provenance to the stories that is absolutely clear for the audience, and that is the kind of training that we can provide. And I think, you know, we've heard already that the Nottingham Trent University connection for Notts TV, many other services have connections with journalistic courses and other universities, and we have formal partnerships with Edinburgh Napier University in Edinburgh and Glasgow Caledonian University over in the West, because that's a huge part of what we're going to be doing. We're going to be bringing on the next generation of TV journalists and production staff.
Two questions, Bobby. First up, let's do a true-false one. Scotland has more giant pandas than Tory MPs. True or false?
It's true.
It's true,
yeah,
right?
right?
Yeah. It has. It has 2 giant pandas and 1 Tory MP. You're right. Second question is actually about the nature of reach, because one of the things over the years, and I know that STV's had a number of kind of thorny problems over the years. First of all, there was the role of the so-called Grampian licence in the northeast of Scotland, whereas STV historically has been a central belt-based network station with its HQ in Glasgow. And then, of course, the other area of quite significant tension was the borders of Scotland and indeed the borders of England that felt badly served by the map of television. Scotland's very much a nation, but it's a nation of regions, and it's a nation of localities and cities and all the rest of it. Do you imagine that you've sufficient tentacles to get out to what is a massively big geographic country, albeit with a smaller population than England?
We are absolutely equipped to do that. As I say, we've got 125 staff across the country, and we have stringers and connections and, and all kinds of additional resource that we can call on. The city TV services are, by their nature, focused on individual cities. And as you rightly say, Stuart, if you look at the newspaper consumption over the years, the Press and Journal was the best-selling paper in the quality paper, if you like, as we used to call them in Aberdeen, the Dundee Courier, the Scotsman in Edinburgh, the Glasgow Herald, very distinctive communities with different sensitivities. And I think that we are well equipped to know our way around that territory, number one. Number two, this fits in with our kind of multi-layered approach. We announced yesterday we're going to launch 4 city companion digital services with apps, with mobile web, with desktop services, which are not just about news, but around what's going on in your city, where the new restaurants are, what the what's on information is. I mean, very much kind of local media service all in one app, which will be going in 4 different cities, and that goes hand in hand with a focus on the different cities. So I think we absolutely have core resource already in Glasgow and Edinburgh. We make a whole programme at 6 o'clock here, just around the corner from here. We make a show out of Glasgow at 6 o'clock, and on top of that resource layer, we will add new resource and target new content for the specific cities.
Thank you, Bobby. We'll come back to, I'm sure, some of these issues in questioning. But Jane, I want to introduce you again and allow you to kind of introduce the tape. London Live, of course, one of the licensees, and clear connection there with a newspaper, the Evening Standard, which itself has gone free as a newspaper. And historically, you've also worked in other areas of broadcasting that have been connected to communities in very direct ways. The community channel itself, Current TV, working often on kind of lower budget innovation and new talent. So tell us, what should we look forward to with London Live and set up the offering?
Well, just to put some context on it, when I launched BBC London's on TV, on radio, online, tri-media service over 12 years ago, I used to go to the English regional management meetings in Birmingham and sit with my fellow heads of different regions every month and talk about issues and how we would make things work in our regions. And when I left, I gave them a snow globe with a picture of myself on one side, in case they forgot me, and a picture of London on the other side. And it was one of these ones that had a talking element to it. So when you shook it, put it on the desk, it said, "London is different."
Yeah.
And I just didn't want them to forget that when I left, because actually it felt like we all had to be templated and all had to behave in a certain way. And that's the thing with all of this local TV opportunity. At last, we can start to reflect the area that we live in and not do it within the sort of soulless, homogenous template that ITV regions are now forced into, the BBC's going on with the integrated news hour. And that's it. That's how we cover our cities. And for London, that's unimaginable. The best city in the world, the most exciting place that you can imagine. And
there's still a London allowance. When are you going to stop? When are you going to stop taking these subsidies from the public purse?
Well, I'm really encouraged by what I'm hearing about STV, because I think that is exactly the sort of energy that we would like to put into London, which is a nation unto itself, obviously. And that difference has been knocked out of the TV ecology. And as Nigel said, what's happened as a result is that we've lost a load of people to television who can do it. They're already out there. They're making content online. They know better than us on most areas, and there's nowhere for them to go because there's only a tiny sliver of an opportunity on mainstream broadcasters. So I think what we're hoping to do is to create a new gene pool for television, and that we'll be a bridge between that sort of a wild west out there and mainstream television, and that Freeview slot really gives us a chance. Now, we have to make 5.5 hours of news and current affairs a day, which is huge. We're going to do that in-house. We're part of the Standard and Independent group. We've got lots of journalism at our core. All of the rest of our budget, which is the majority, £10 million a year, will be spent creating content for London using our independent communities and new filmmakers. So this is a big opportunity for everybody in London. Our positioning is a platform for Londoners. We've been lucky enough to get this space. We want to share this space. It's not ours. It's there for everybody to use and for the whole community to benefit. And that's the community of film producers. So before I sort of go on to what that opportunity is, what we need people to make for us, just a little bit about our tone. We want to be modern, urban, celebratory and very knowing and savvy about London. And we've put together a little sizzle, and if you were at this morning's meeting, I apologise, we're going to re-show it, to just give a sense of the tone that we want to bring to television. So I've got to do something. Here we go.
There you go, Jane. Well done.
I forgot that
well
bit.
done.
I can't control this feeling. Something's happening inside me. Our senses come alive. The chemistry's building. It's something that we're feeling. There's no way you can hide.
Somebody make some noise.
It's gonna get louder. We're gonna get stronger. We're gonna feel better. You can't tame this energy inside. Come on.
So hopefully that gives you a sense of the level of energy and fun that we want to have. We're going to be targeted at 18 to 34-year-olds. I think it's something like 66% of Londoners are under 44. It's a very young city, and we want to celebrate that city with our viewers and get them engaged in what we're doing. And the opportunity around creating content and the programs that we need to make is a huge challenge for us. We're probably 7-ish months to launch, and the reason why I haven't got any other content to show you is because we don't have any. We have nothing.
Yeah.
So, you know, this is an opportunity for everyone who wants to join us. It doesn't mean that we're not about to hopefully sign some commissioning deals imminently. We've got a lot of people interested in working with us. Small companies, Lemonade Money, who we're talking to, helped make that sizzle for us, which was great. And bigger companies as well. And you know, our tariff is 20k an hour. It's not huge, but it's not ridiculously small if you're looking at volume and you're looking at different ways of making content. And we're also willing to work in a flexible way and in a partnership with producers so that if they want to exploit the content internationally with back end, change the model, we're willing to listen to any of their proposals for that because we want them to get value from making the content as well as giving us value. And the other thing is, you know, you're not going to have your taxis turned back. We will, you know, absolutely stick to meeting you quickly. We will make decisions even quicker. You will not recognise the speed of decision making because we have to get on with it. There's no big hierarchy of who do we talk to get approvals and all the rest of it. That's just not going to happen. So you will get things going quickly, which I think will be a real value. And I think the other thing is that we want to give people a chance to express themselves and to get new creativity into television. So we don't have preconceptions. We're not about formatting the hell out of whatever idea you bring to us or you come to us, well, actually, you know, this is what we wanted. We have no idea yet. We're really open to new ideas. And when we put the content on the channel, we want our audience to be part of the evolution of the future of the channel. So they will comment on the content and that will reflect what we do next. And we want this openness and transparency to be a real part of who we are. And that means that people who put content on our channels will hopefully get a large wodge of genuinely good feedback as well as audience evaluation. And we're looking at launching a huge audience panel for London. and that's being worked on, and we'll have more details on that soon. And we've also got, obviously, the London Evening Standard with 2 million viewers a day, readers a day rather, and 1 million unique users online. People we can talk to now about some of the content ideas and test ideas with. So it's incredibly exciting, it's incredibly scary, but it's very real, and it's happening soon. And we definitely need some contribution from everyone here.
Yeah, a couple of questions, Jane. One of the things that, if you look back, if we were writing the, as it were, the history of the rise of local media and local TV, one of the examples abroad that you might have looked at, and you talked there about the uniqueness, the unique status of London as a city, and it probably shares many similarities with, say, New York or Toronto or other big cities, and certainly in the New York cable scene and the Toronto city TV model, there's been this kind of engagement with, if you like, not just simply a city and its citizens, but almost kind of modelling images of the city because of its multicultural richness or its multi-ethnic richness or whatever. Do you see this as being a new channel in many other respects, in the sense that it won't carry some of the kind of burdens that traditional television has carried with it?
Yes, I'm not sure why traditional television feels there are burdens.
Isn't burdened,
I don't see that. I mean, I think the excitement of London comes from that diversity and comes from the amount of creativity and original thinking. I mean, it's a very creative environment to be in. And you see that by going to different areas of London. That's what I was saying earlier as well, that if we're West End London and we're tourist London, we're not going to succeed. We have to get out of the centre, and we have to open up our airwaves, and as well as our interpretation with some of our, you know, traditionally trained or untraditionally trained video journalists, and obviously the Evening Standard and independent staff who will have training in television as well. We're absolutely wanting to get new ways of telling stories onto the screen, and we're going to launch a specific zone, which is working title at the moment, London Raw, which will sort of be from 11 o'clock onwards, where we're going to put content on that isn't quite ready for telly. And we're going to be open about that and say to people, experiment, use it, see what you find out, see what people think of it, and, you know, something will come of that. And there's nowhere else to do that.
No, there isn't. I mean, maybe one of the answers to the question about the burdens that traditional network TV have carried, there's a real direct similarity with the music scene, where in the 70s and 80s there was a question about what constituted good music. There was levels of professionalism, levels of the money invested in it, the amount of tracks of studio time that you were recording on and whatever. And then suddenly urban music and hip hop particularly came along, and were doing great music for nothing. It was homemade and DIY and all the rest of it. And you kind of feel sometimes with local TV that we're sitting on the precipice of a similar shift of thinking.
You know.
And
I think that's that bridge thing, you know, that there's an absolute chasm at the moment between that sort of innovation that you're seeing online and what's happening on mainstream. And part of the problem is there's literally been no space in television, and this is creating space. And you know, the opportunity of that space is huge. We still have to make the books balance. So, you know, a large amount of our content will be very commercially driven. But we would be failing if we didn't provide space. And I think, we've seen what's happened in Toronto with City TV and in New York, and I actually genuinely believe we can do better.
There you have it.
Those are old models now.
Exciting thoughts there, and we'll come to the audience and some of these questions going up. And Jane was quick there to get a wee dig in there at Channel 4 for taxis turning producers back at the door. And that of course,
I was thinking about Danny Cohen having to write about how to be polite to people when they're commissioning.
You realise this won't happen at live TV, because they've got Crossrail, which I think was also subsidised by a tax on the regions as well.
Bitter.
Just so enough people could get to the Olympics, which was also subsidised. Anyway, you get my point, don't you? It's going to be fantastic, and I think it's one of the most massively exciting moments that I've always been a great believer in regionality in the broader sense of that, and to have so many different models that will be competing from Grimsby to Nottingham to Glasgow to Dundee to London. You know, if something doesn't spark out of that kind of kicks the arse of television, I'd be very deeply surprised. Before we, well, why don't we actually take a little break here for some questions from the floor, and then I'm going to come to Matthew to do a little kind of piece about the technologies and benefits. Yes, sir, first one there. Could you wait till the microphone just arrives so we've got everything recorded, please? So, yes, and we'll come to you as well.
How do you see the audience sort of research side of things going? Traditional sort of barb panels are quite kind of like large areas, and you might not get the sort of resolution you're looking for in a local level.
Yeah, so the question there is really about audiences and insights into what audiences want, given that the barb panel is something that was invented in a different era against the backdrop of network television. I wonder if there's a range of people. Nigel, why don't we take a view from you on that one?
It's an absolutely crucial question, and it's been one of our major preoccupations. As a channel nationally, as number 8, or in England, Northern Ireland, we will be able to measure it by barb. So we'll be able to measure it as a national, and that is really important for our network sales operation. So we'll be selling national adverts against a barb measurement. But obviously, when you get down to local towns and cities, that's going to be more difficult. And again, it's partly a budgetary issue, so I suspect perhaps London will be able to finance a similar operation to barb. Other people won't be able to. And those ones who can't are going to have to come up with other ways of measuring the audience. I think it's really crucial that we all do measure our audiences locally. It's really kind of work in progress. We know we've got to get that right.
Yeah, going to you, Bobby, in a way you've already had a kind of hint at some of this because you're having to sell advertising on a pan-Scottish basis, often looking at maybe panels and whatever that may not always be nuanced to the way in which you work.
I think it's worth remembering that if you are if you're a media buyer buying a national campaign against a specific target audience, then you need accountability and you need sophistication in what that audience measurement is. And as Nigel says, I think it's no coincidence that the one thing Ofcom is requiring all of us to do together is figure out a way of how we manage to measure the audience, given its importance. But it's also true to say that if you're an advertiser whose door we knock in Glasgow or Edinburgh, you're not going to buy an advert on the strength of the audience. You're going to buy it because you like what you see on the TV, and it either works for your business or it doesn't work for your business. And actually, for a lot of regional advertising and local advertisers now, whether they buy in the in the press or radio or on television where they have opportunities, that is the basis on which a lot of people buy commercials just now. So in terms of some of the commercial models, I mean, I saw Made TV the other week saying some of their ads are relatively low cost compared with regular TV services. And the history is from Irish channels actually having a relationship with the advertiser who feels involved with the station. Crucially, as Nigel said, there are new ad formats that we can trial that are not bound by the existing Costa rules about how many adverts you can have and how long the breaks are. So there's a big commercial opportunity. Having said all that, there is to the question, it's very important for us to know what the numbers are, but it is only part of the story in how we commercialise it.
Yeah, I've often wondered whether the Costa rules are actually undue prominence for a particular coffee brand, haven't they? Say whether Ofcom are breaking rules there, but never mind. Jane, I was wondering here about young viewers or younger audiences, because you talked about the urban and raw nature of your brand, and clearly that's a very, very kind of clear way of thinking about the community. It's it's younger generation, it's aspirational generation, it's generation that are not yet settled, they consume more entertainment, they're out more and whatever. That's quite exciting, but it may contradict, I don't know, what Grimsby's doing, where maybe they're looking for a different type of audience. So how important is the segmentation of the audience?
Well, obviously, in commercial terms, it's very important, but it's also important to get the tone right, which is why we're really making an emphasis on that tone of being urban and entertaining. And for us, counting people who are watching content on other platforms, as well as through Barb on the television, will be equally important. And also being able to account for our interactivity, and that's something advertisers are interested in. We will have a second screen app running throughout our service, and we will be able to offer advertisers an opportunity to engage with those very switched on consumers. And I think that's really important. And our audience research has already shown that the target group that we're talking about, not most of them, a large number of them don't actually watch television anymore. You know, they watch content on their devices. So for us, it's a very valuable experience to have people watching our content on mobile and on other platforms.
Yeah, there was another question here and another question there
fine.
and one there.
He's
Oh my
fine.
God, they're all coming at me now and I've only got 6 minutes left. Yeah, same question. Yes, please. Yeah, and we'll take the microphone, please. And then round here, please. Yeah.
Ashley Highfield, Johnston Press. We did about 4,500 bits of video last month, and so we're taking video very seriously. I think this is a great initiative because it's adding to the overall ecology. We're going to be launching probably about 20 IP-delivered TV channels in Q1 of next year for our biggest titles like The Scotsman. My wonder is that whilst we can sell local advertising to it, the prize is can we get a share of the national advertising revenue? We're going to try and sell all of ours together as a network sell. How could we, together with you, or how are you going to try and get a slice of the national advertising pie?
Nigel.
Yeah, well, we're actually in the process of selecting a national sales agency, so we're treating it very seriously, and we think there's a real market there. Being number 8 on Freeview, in England and Northern Ireland, but nevertheless, even on the figures in Scotland as well, we're all being assured is definitely a very saleable position to be in. So I'm just talking about the TV side now, I'm not talking about the online side. So nationally we are getting together. London is being treated separately, but with in discussions at the moment exactly how it's going to work. But the idea is there will be a national sales house selling nationally. And I think that's an important part of it. Saying that, everyone locally will also have their own local sales team as well.
Yeah, and the gentleman there, please, if you could just take the microphone round. I guess, Nigel, if to test that, if the 8th button on Freeview was put up for auction, people would be very interested.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Hello, Matt Cook from Google. I was wondering if you had any plans on any of the channels to have live broadcasting, and how do you see that looking in costing as well?
Live broadcasting, this in the context where Google themselves have experimented and innovated in big concert, big statement pieces and whatever.
Well, we're called London Live, so that's a clue.
Yeah.
5.5 hours of the content will be live because it's news and current affairs. And then we are intending to do a lot of live events coverage, music, festivals, comedy, throughout the schedule. I mean, obviously the volume of it will depend on funding and what other content competes for it.
And is that the same across the other channels?
Yeah, it takes longer to do recorded stuff because you always got that thing in the back of your head that says we can try this again if it doesn't work. So we will by necessity be, if not wholly live, largely live, because it's about today, it's about now, it's about what's happening in your city, and it's live and news based. So it's very much and depends on interactivity as well. So it's the majority of it is live.
Okay, I'm just going to go ahead. I'm conscious there's some more questions on the floor, but Matthew from Garland Partners, I want to bring you in here. Sorry, there's your thing. And we're really talking here about some of the technological innovations that can help some of these things we've already talked about, user generation content, mobile content and whatever. So the floor is yours for the next few minutes.
Thank you very much. I'll just skip all that bit for you. Actually, taking your point about live is actually quite very apt for what I want to be able to talk to you about, really. And I think that the challenge with live video delivery is probably cost and also elements of speed, various other contributing factors that traditional broadcasters have to take into account. So just to tell you where I'm from a company called Garland Partners. We work with a select number of industry partners, one of which is a piece of technology called LiveView. I've got a unit here, which is essentially an OB unit in my hand, ultimately, which enables you to deliver live video, video packages, and file-based delivery directly into the broadcast chain to ultimately have a rapid content delivery mechanism. And I think that the acquisition of content, both live and news packages, can be streamlined with technology such as this. What I'd like to do is just point you in the direction of the slide above, really. There's a number of broadcasters using this sort of technology, various different flavours. There's also mobile phone-based applications in this nifty little wand that you see here, which enables you to deliver live video from an application, but with broadcast-grade quality and sustainability matched with reliability as well.
Wow. You can brush your hair with it as well.
I could, yeah. Just to sort of show you who's using LiveView at the minute, it's a very well-established technology. It uses cellular-based networks and ultimately has diverse data paths to be able to deliver this sort of quality that broadcasters expect. One such example is a company called 3Screen Media, who is a partner of ours, and I'd just like to play a video from them. Sorry for cutting that short, but we've just been pretty much out of time, but just wanted to explain that. So 3Screen Media predominantly concentrate on sports content, and all the examples you saw there were using LiveView technology or cellular-based technology, but hopefully that just sort of gives an idea of how the technology can be applied to local television and content acquisition and live events, delivery, news coverage.
Yeah, so you gave us a very clear indication there of the neat, compact nature of the package of the live and whatever. Yes, that one. I used to have a mobile phone about the same size as that. The interesting thing about it is, can you put a cost on that?
Well, it's the typical sort of model is that LiveView go for on the larger sort of backpack-orientated system is what you would typically pay for a traditional broadcast mechanism like satellite trucks, for example. I would say it's around 90% cheaper.
Cheaper, yeah, okay. So if you took an OB truck to cover a live event, that's 90% cheaper.
Yeah, I'd say that what you would typically expect to pay for a day's event would give you a LiveView unit for a month to be able to use on that sort of level.
As required, exactly. Whatever.
And we'll be experimenting with the use of such technology, but obviously there are issues around connectivity when big events are happening.
And the must-have and must-see nature of it and that. Folks, there's so much more we could have talked about, but I think you've got a flavour for some of the different approaches that people are taking to their local TV franchises and licenses. And I think it's really important as well that we may see a significant new breakthrough in innovation, technological and creative, within local TV in the months and years ahead. So without going back over naming everybody again, can we have a round of applause for the panel, please? So that's it, folks. Thank you. Thank you very much.